Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are y'all doing?
Great. All right.
It is another Sunday to talk about Ashes of Creation. We were going to go over the Tower of Carphin footage. We still had a ton of questions from the community Q&A as well, but maybe since the other's, 3 weeks old? It's been a little bit. 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old. We can start with some of that. But first, anything new going on since we last met?
Only thing new going on is you were playing New World.
Yes.
Oh, how was that?
Not that bad, actually. I have not played it since they did the whole sort of new server revamp, quest line, storyline. What really made me interested was this idea of seasons that I think we might have talked about briefly on the show. They've started this whole season system. However, you have to be level 25 in order to join that. So I am still kind of working my way through the main story quest line. I think I'm 20 or 21. Not bad since I just started yesterday. In comparison,
that started on the Fresh Start server. So you're starting from scratch on the Fresh Start server. You're 21 now.
Yes, and that's on, I think it's called Isabella. If anyone plays or is interested in playing, I'm going to see if I hang out there. I found myself jumping around between MMORPGs at this point. Neverwinter, Lord of the Rings was there. I even played a little bit of WoW Classic, which has seen a very large resurgence of player population, interestingly enough. Very, very active server. I think they're also starting, they had a Season of Mastery. They're going to start a Season of Mastery 2 or something coming up. By comparison, I probably have spent maybe half the time that I've spent on New World on the classic server, and I think I'm like level 4, level 5, something like that. But you know,
kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember like classic. You got level 6 in the first hour of like original first run vanilla classic.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I 100% remember that coming out of beta, coming right in as the game started. Tauren Shaman took literally an hour. I'm already level 6.
I don't know. I rolled up a human cleric. A lot of holy fire. Takes about 3 to get somebody down. Then I got to sit and either drink or wait for my mana to come back up. So that's where a lot of that downtime is, which is hilarious because I can remember those comparisons of EverQuest. It's like, oh, this is so much faster, right? EverQuest took forever. You had to med, unless you had, what was it, Clarity or something from an enchanter. But, and then World of Warcraft comes along. Oh, you drink the water and it just, you fill up so quickly. But fast forward to now and it's like, dang, this is still taking forever. So things have sped up even more. But no, it's actually... the New World, the new start server is pretty well populated. It's been around for a while. So, I mean, it's a pretty mature server at this point. Prices are decent. It didn't have a lot of the duping issues, financial up and down, stuff that some of the others have had. So, but it's a good looking game. I've been playing with a bow and rapier, which has been actually a really fun combination to play with.
They use similar attributes.
There are some, yes, dexterity is a crossover where they divide. I think the bow strength can also modify your damage, but with the rapier, it's intelligence, I think. So I'm just pure dex at this point. But Yeah, it's been fun. The two things I think have been done really well is still harvesting is still very well done. Crafting, I've honestly not even bothered with. I've been harvesting, so I've got plenty of stuff stocked up, but I've not bothered crafting anything. One, I haven't really had to because I've had enough gold to just sort of purchase what I need going forward. But and with the revamp to their main story quest line, you pretty well get items upgraded the whole way. So there's really no reason to even spend. But yeah, the other thing that I think they've done very well is the travel. Like, it seems, you see, wow, this I'm 500, 600, whatever away. Travel is done very well. That's something I think we really talked about, that, you get from point A to B actually pretty quickly, considering how far it initially feels. And they've modified their fast travel too. I don't know if you remember, it used to be, I think, by weight, and who owned the faction that owned the area that you're in. So far, I'm factionless, and it's only 10 Azoth to get any kind of teleport. So,
Nice.
Yeah, it's been okay. We'll see how long it sticks. I keep trying to figure out why I can't stay. I played Lord of the Rings for a long time. I Neverwinter for a while, and they're both, they're good, decent games.
It's because you aren't playing with people.
You have read my mind. I actually have thought a lot about that today, and I truly think that is what is missing. That there's an excitement for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, maybe a week, 2 weeks, and then there's really nothing to pull back in. So, it gets to be late. I've had to work, had kids, blah, blah, blah. It's 8:00. There's no incentive to like, oh, I got to go join Diggs. We are going to play today at 8:30. There's just no real reason to do that. And so interest just sort of dives, which is interesting to me, because I've been one that has always said, for Ashes in particular, you really have to not leave out the single player group, as far as how do you stay successful long term. But then here I am, kind of an argument against that. So
Maybe. I mean, you're still doing some. I think it's that the solo play is not for always. It's not that you should always be playing solo, but for those days when nobody's around, then and you want to play, then you should be able to play. So it just needs to be there, really, so that on those times, because that was the real draw. I mean, any of you who are old enough to have played tabletop RPGs back before MMORPGs existed, and it's great when you're in high school, and then college hits, and then you can play like once every 2 months once people have time to fit in. And the beauty of the MMORPGs is you can play whenever you want, and you don't have to wait for your friends to be online. But again, once you hit your 30s and 40s and you have kids, different schedules, then can you wait? Are you just going to have the weekends? How many weekends are you going to, because kids are doing stuff on the weekends, especially once they hit 7, 8, 9, 10. They've got soccer and football and ballet and all this stuff. So when are you going to get together with your friends to play? And if you can't, you should be able to spend some time soloing. That's kind of the beauty of being able to solo. But I mean, if I know you're on, then we could play.
Well, another great example on this topic. Anytime anyone goes out the house, I get notified. Anyways, so I try to mute it if I can. During War Classic, WoW, it is very populated, so it's trying to kill kobolds. There's I'm fighting 10 other people. And yesterday when I was playing a little bit, someone invited me to a group. Now the whole reason was just, not compete. Let's just join up, get it done. But that sort of gravitation towards even working with someone I didn't know, but still had some basic communication. Hey, are you done? No, I still have one more. Okay. kind of kept me in the game longer than I probably would have by myself. And now, will I ever see that player again? Probably not. But even that sort of ability to just naturally gravitate towards someone, even if it's just for one play session, I think is super important in keeping players interested. You're right. I might not really need to. I'm just going to go craft, and so I can spend some time by myself. But on instances like that, I think it's actually super important to try to figure out how to best do that. So,
Yep.
it's where things like public quests and stuff like that have come up. What was it? Warhammer Online, I think, had a great public quest system. I don't know. It keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I love running into other people and playing with. I don't necessarily want to be stuck in a group forever, but I definitely like being able to play alongside other people. I'm hoping that's going to be a thing in Ashes of Creation, of course, because we don't have instances. It's an interesting thing about what even solo means, because for me, solo means just not being in a group. But a lot of people say that means you're antisocial, but I don't have to. I shouldn't have to formally join a group to be able to fight alongside a group and still take down a mob, and hopefully get some kind of recognition for having participated without being in a group, or being in the group that killed it, or is getting credit for killing it. There's lots of ways to be social without formally joining a group, where there should be. But yeah, so I've still been playing a little bit of World of Warcraft. I do the weekly stuff. I'm working on the monthly trading post, I think is what they call it. It's a new thing where you get some cosmetics and stuff if you complete 1000 XP in the trading post, or 1000 points in the trading post, or something like that. And I think I have 950 for April. So I'll try and do maybe 50 more and get my 1000, and then hopefully join you in New World.
well, the last thing I'll say on New World that I've noticed this time around compared to last, again, just this concept of playing with others, and I think this also highlights what you're saying, Diggs, that solo doesn't necessarily mean not interacting with others. The introduction of musical instruments and sheet music and other things that actually provide buffs. I've had a couple instances now. I'm not really even paying attention. I walk through and I realize I'm in a big highlighted circle, and it's somebody that has a guitar or something that they're playing a song, and there's a time period that it has to play, and you get a benefit of some sort. You sit there, and it's not a long period of time, but it's long enough that other people join, and you can hit a dance emote or something. It's just those sort of little interactions that keep you sort of interested. You get an opportunity to tempt them like 10 gold or something afterwards, pops up on your UI. But those little things like that, I don't know, just keep things interesting, so that you're not sort of a single player in a larger world. So
I do want to jump over to Neuro and Destiny 2 just for a little bit. So my goddaughter, I was speaking with my goddaughter in Discord. She's 35, so that's the communication that you have with 30-year-olds.
There you go. Sounds like something I do, except
right?
my older relatives don't seem to be on Discord. So
Exactly, right. So yeah, so she was talking about the lore of Destiny and kind of going through that, and I was saying, oh yeah, I got a bunch of friends playing Destiny 2, and Snipe Hunter's working on it. So it has me, since she's playing, it has me even more curious about it. I was telling her I might have to jump in and take a look around, although I don't know what I'd be doing in that game since I'm a Care Bear. But I'm kind of curious about the character creator, if I can even create a character that I would like to play. So I guess my question for you, kind of, Neuro, is as a Care Bear, because this is basically a first-person shooter. It's not really an MMORPG.
It is a first-person shooter, yes.
So that means it's very combat-oriented, I would expect. What would a Care Bear be doing, maybe to help? I want to call it a faction, but I really mean the DLP crew. Like we think of crafting, okay, and Ashes of Creation, it's supposed to be, well, you could do crafting, and then you don't have to do combat. You could just craft for your cohort. Is there something like that in Destiny 2 for Care
There
Bear?
is a crafting system. There is no trade between players whatsoever in any instance, shape, or form. So you are crafting from recipes only for yourself. So you can make a very specific version or multiple specific versions if you like a weapon so much that you want to have two mixes of it on hand. But to give it the exact characteristics that you want, given what that type of weapon is. There's a couple of the fanciest, the exotic tier weapons that also have a crafting component, which allows you to customize, which normally exotic weapons you don't have that option with. They're slowly starting to weave that in. If you are looking to do something collaboratively to help a group that you're playing with, it is quite simply do quests, play PvE content. If you want, you could play PvP content. I don't think you want to. Maybe you might like Gambit, but definitely not like Crucible and the Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris, which are all free, by the way. The game gives PvP to all the players. You might not have access to Stasis and Strand unless you pay for those the expansions that have that content. But other than that, the three light-based classes, the Arc, Solar, and Void, you have access to those. You have access to all the PvE stuff or PvP stuff. You can access all of the open world zones. So if you just want to like hang around with other players and kind of shoot the stuff they're shooting and like engage in participating with the events in the region, you can do that. There's things to explore, there's things to discover and achieve, there's secrets galore. All of that you can access for free. The stuff that's locked into the seasonal content, either the annual seasons like the big chapters or the quarterly seasonal content, those are the numbered seasons, those do require a buy-in. And depending on the level of engagement you're looking for, there's different ways to buy in different methods. But for people that don't want to pay anything, but they want to help support a group that they're playing with, there's the Vanguard missions, and if you like Gambit, you could do Gambit. There's, I believe, some raids that you can even do. There's destination-based stuff. And all of those are things that will help contribute clan experience, which helps level up the clan and open up more features and ways that the clan can cooperate with each other, as well as the I find her kind of hilarious. She was a lot more serious character early on, but now she's kind of comic relief. Soraya, the gal with the bird, who's like just sitting there gabbing with the bird half the time. She will give you special little rewards for doing that. She's kind of the clan activities coordinator person. So that's the biggest way in which an individual player can contribute with a group that they're playing with. Play the game with them, or play the content that generates the experience and helps fulfill the stuff that gives the weekly, they're called engrams. That's a data core that manifests into a piece of equipment.
My goddaughter's the one who was saying that she thinks it might all be a simulation, and engram seems like that might be a thing for people, if I remember my Scientology correctly. But anyway, okay, I might poke a toe in the water a little bit, take a look around, just to see.
I will give a word of advice though. After it railroads you to Neptune, don't hang around there too long. It's real tough. They decided instead of all the other open world zones where the things are kind of puny, you can kind of make your way around and hit some stuff, and you won't get blasted immediately. Neptune, they've decided, no, you're just gonna get your ass kicked walking around there. You're fighting max level enemies instead of min level enemies, basically. So, I mean, when you're ready for the challenge, it's definitely worth it. And I'm not saying don't try it out, but it's gonna be hard initially. It is definitely not like that's specific to this new Lightfall content that they've done it this
Gotcha.
way.
Okay.
I did want to say something earlier about the subject of the kill quest, and this kind of gets to the heart of the kill/collect quest, gets to the heart of what Ashes of Creation is all about to me, is the idea that an NPC might be concerned about lowering the population of a certain creature in an area. So just on face value, so long as somebody's doing the killing, that's what they need. Now, that's not to say that you get the quest and then like leave the zone and you come back and say, hey, the job's done, right? Yeah, you got to pay me, right? There's going to be some stuff in the systems to prevent that. But the idea of being able to observe something being killed, you watched 50 kobolds at whatever camp get killed. Great. So, even though you might not have necessarily participated in it, you have observed it and you can report your observation. Yo, those 50 kobolds, or that kobold camp over there that you asked me to kill 50 of them? Well, I watched 50 of them die right in front of me. Take that for what it is. That's kind of like a bit of a compromise for when you've got that situation of everybody needs to kill the same type of enemy that's in a certain area, and there's not enough enemy saturation for all the players that need to get a piece of it. Now, with Ashes, it could upscale the amount that spawns and even spread out their region a bit if this quest is being given out more regularly. There's a lot of people that have it in their log that need to participate. Sure, I could see that as a way to help kind of reduce it. But then let's say it's not kobolds. Let's say it's something you need to collect a bloody trophy off of. Going back to our friends with the what was that show? It was way back in the EQ days, Tanlin and Venelis and all of them, the bear butts example. If you killed a bear and you just skinned a bear and I didn't get a chance to touch the body, and be like, hey, yo, dog, I watched you kill that bear. I watched you skin it. I need to gather bear butts for like a bear butt stew. I don't know what the NPC needs it for, but Joe Schmo in the other town, little Timmy, needs bear butts for his remedy. So can I buy a bear butt? Can I trade for the one that you've obtained? Now that's kind of going to create an interesting sort of thing, because I've just skinned this bear. I just got its skin. Maybe its butt is a separate item. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something that I have to engage with the player and say bear butts, and then in their bear skin inventory they can right click on it and search for bear butts, and produce one from the skin that they've got. We can make a transaction and I can get the item that I need. So that's the sort of thing that I'm a little interested to see how that would resolve, because if I need a MacGuffin off of a creature and that creature is slain and broken down in front of me by somebody who doesn't have that quest for that MacGuffin, is that MacGuffin gone from that unit, or is there still a way that I can recover from the situation and potentially trade and get what I need? Or the more violent route, try to PvP kill the person and search them for bear butts.
Yeah, it is Ashes of Creation after all. Is Vanguard the game you were thinking of? Anyway, with
No, the talk show that they had. back
I
in the
got you.
EQ days.
Right. I got
EQ
you.
next.
So that has me kind of thinking of crafting orders in WoW Dragonflight. Kind of similar stuff you can do there to have your crafters craft material for you and then kind of trade it. It's a new system that they have that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so you had me thinking of social organizations and how they might be interacting with events. You were mentioning kobolds, but with events and Ashes of Creation, that has me thinking of goblins, since that's the demo that they gave us was the goblin event. But yeah, I wonder how you have me now wondering how social organizations and religions would be interacting with whatever goblin event is out there. And even if we um, destroy a whole um, community of goblins, um, a village or whatever, how would religions react to that? And how would specific social organizations react to that? And what kind of benefit can you get, even if you're not killing them? What else might you be doing through religion or social organization to participate in that event? Hmm. Yeah, we haven't heard anything about religions. And I don't think we've heard anything in 6 years. I don't think we've heard anything about how religions relate or how social organizations relate to the game.
Social organizations is a thing that keeps on coming up, and it keeps bringing me back to that document from the big 8 mega documents. That was literally about social organizations and trying to get beyond, oh, you're just in a guild. There might be other associations, but you're not actually enrolled with them. To kind of break beyond that, and this group is my crafting, artisans guild. This is my adventurers club. This is my my faith organization, and to actually be in each one in a codified spot and role and position and orientation in it, that to have these systems that you're in a guild and you're a resident of a place, okay, sure, but then there's still more than that. And while you might be able to see, okay, this person's name is on the census, they live here, or, see that I'm a part of a guild, which is probably just going to be on my name tag. Being able to know that somebody is a member of the Sanctus Stonemasons or whatever, that or some other sort of semi-secretive or loose association of peoples that maybe aren't always in the same place at the same time, but they do coordinate in different ways. So that's the sort of stuff that I'd like to see a little bit more of, that there's a lot of different organizations you can maybe be a part of or not. You don't have to be a resident of anywhere. It's just going to be hard to find a place to stash your stuff. But if you're going to go with that road warrior, I only own what I carry sort of thing, then then that's what it is.
So you just had me wondering too. You don't join or you don't become a part of a node. So you're not a citizen. But are there temples out that, I mean, there could be a series of temples for your religion out wherever outside of a city or whatever. So maybe you're traveling from temple to temple. But maybe there's things like that for your social organizations, right? Does the Thieves Guild that you belong to have to be just in your city, in your one node, or can that be somewhere out in the wild that you go to? And I'm kind of thinking of that in terms of when we're thinking about looking for group, I often think that it should be easier in Ashes of Creation because we have freeholds where we know a person is likely to be. A lot of the homes are in the open world, so a lot of those people will know where their actual home is, and we can go there and probably find those people who are normally online at the same time we play. We can actually go there and say, "Hey, um, let's do this together," and then come back or whatever. Um, it's more difficult to do in an instance home, which like an instance apartment, because you can go to their door maybe, but right there, there's no way to know that they're physically there. You can't just walk by and say, "Hey, they're probably inside." Um, uh, so I'm just wondering, maybe there's, or if there should be. I hadn't thought about it before, but are there these places that crop up outside of a? I mean, could it be a POI, um, location of interest that you're going to go to? Huh. Um, we'll have to see. And something else we don't know. And how many months do we have for them to talk about this stuff before Alpha 2? We'll have to see.
As many as they want, but hopefully less than 12.
Yes.
They've said quite a lot about religions. I mean, I assume that would apply to some of the other social structures as well, as far as quest lines and probably changing, larger storylines based off of, well, we can talk about story arcs, have if some node has heavily gone down an optional component of some sort of specific religion, does that change the next storyline that is presented to the server? That sort of stuff augments all that. The religious leaders for the metropolis. So there's, I don't know. At times they have said, I think it's more of a side grade stuff that you can not participate in religions, but at other times it does seem like religions actually provide quite a bit of content to utilize.
I mean, it's the same for social orgs. You don't have to join a social organization. Those are just alternative paths. Those are the horizontal progression versus vertical progression. So yeah, you don't have to participate on those, but they give you, other stuff to do besides just crafting and adventuring.
But that kind of brings us to, again, story arcs and, whether a religion plays a role. We have learned quite a bit from the Tower of Carphin video. I don't know if there's anything that had stuck out to either of you initially greater than the rest that you'd like to talk about. There's the story arc system seems interesting.
This is the first time they've really kind of talked about the idea of NPCs with conflicting goals and running into, or not just NPCs, like, world driving entities, essentially, that may manifest as NPCs. They may manifest as two groups of rival warring creatures, or could be two different weather fronts that you have the ability to make one manifest and overwhelm the other one or something. And likely more than just a two-way sort of thing, but the idea that, one of these entities will be discovered, likely, maybe not exactly at the same time that the opposing entity is discovered, but it might not be that their conflict actually begins until these two or more entities have been, manifested and engaged with in such a way that they can start getting the ball rolling. But the idea that one of them is essentially able to win over the other, or that potentially they could even resolve in a stalemate where neither of them win, and that could be a third and different outcome. That definitely sounds interesting, and that the idea is things will have the first time something resolves, it'll be the permanent resolution and outcome going forward. And unless it's maybe something that's specifically designed to change outcomes when those entities manifest again, then it sounds like if it's a major story arc sort of thing and a major thing that's driving the world story, you're going to end up having whichever entity, succeeds, that'll be the results going forward for that server. And that may have implications down the road. It's like, we helped that Renkai fella over there and, helped him restore his family's homeland, but that meant this Dunir over here was basically prevented from being able to gain access to a material that's needed for a special ritual that will help restore the power of the pantheon of Dunzenkel. So you end up with two different things that you might want both outcomes, but you ain't gonna get both outcomes, because when you help them reestablish the homeland, part of that buries and makes sacred and protects or otherwise the material that the other one needed for their ritual, or changes the state of it such as that it's inaccessible. And that's going to then lead to other things. That homeland that you restored, now new and interesting things can come from it. Renkai from all over start coming in. They start building up the area. They start gaining influence. This could end up going down a bad road where you get the bad kind that start coming around, and then more trouble comes from that. Likewise, it could be that the one who's doing the ritual for the Pantheon, it's not the Pantheon you were thinking of, and they were vague about it. So by the time they actually complete the ritual, and it's done, oh crap, you've just unleashed like the bad side of things, and all of the annoying trickster gods and deities of annoyance and ill progress and such will be the ones that come up, and the area that would have then been the homeland for the other folks is now a place where like old dwarf gods will come and mess with your stuff. Maybe a good thing. It might be that you have to try to bring a Cyclops into that area, and those gods will say, hey, we're going to smite that thing real good for you folks. And who knows? But that's something that I'm really interested about, is how all of those systems are going to work, how they're going to manifest, how many different axes and angles each one will have, both independent of those entities as well as collectively with those entities and other entities trying to push other things around the world, potentially in that area or other places.
Phantom, you said in chat that you're a little confused on how and when chapters advance still. In what way? What's confusing?
So, I understand there are the local chapters, but in this instance, the what was it, blood still due, or whatever it was that they were going through, and how the statement was you can be on vacation for a week and it's okay, you can come back and still participate, but at some point it does become locked, right? So conceivably this is sort of a tally system that after 2-3 weeks, players have done this chapter 5,000 times, and the majority of those times was this outcome. Therefore, chapter 3 is going to be this chapter. So I'm just still a little bit confused on the timing, like how, two parts. So one is when does a chapter end and it becomes canon? Like, are we notified? Are we going to be aware that, hey, this is the last time you can do this? And then also I'm curious on, if I run that chapter 10 times during that period of time, do all 10 outcomes count towards the overall server progression? Or is it or do I only get to add one time? Right? Like, do I really, really try to get it to go one certain direction? Or is there like a large mega guild that wants to drive lore a certain direction? So they run a very specific way, hundreds of times, just trying to get that lead up. So those are things where I'm still just a little bit confused on the process.
Yeah, I think there's a very clear defining part that will lock it in, but I don't know that it's people doing it over and over and over, and then you take which one's got between the two, which one's got more of a certain outcome that's been done. I get more of a feeling like with Carphin, the way that it was explained, I got the sort of idea that there's the boss outside and there's the boss inside. But you're not just going to walk up with 80 of the toughest, well-geared people and immediately walk straight up to either boss and just kill them. I would imagine there's going to be an information gathering phase. You have to learn about them. You have to learn what their weaknesses are, their strengths, whatever. There's going to be a manifesting phase where you have to bring the materials together that will either bring them to a weakened enough state that you can actually fight and kill them, or that when you kill them, they'll remain dead, or the opposite, that they're not actually killable. You'll kill like an image of them, but it isn't unless you actually bring them to their full and their most complete power that you'll actually be able to finish them off and move things forward. But if that's the case, what's going to be the thing that lets you know when it's done? The moment it's been completed to a certain finality by a group of players, and that produces a memory shard of the event that they can go back to and review, that's the point where it's locked in. When you create, it seems like that memory shard system is very much the kind of main story beats and points for a particular chapter. So to that extent, it's when it's been codified into a memory crystal that the participating players are able to access afterward. That's when it's locked in. That's the version it's always going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that the blood can't, start flowing and the mist turns red and, the event itself can come back anew some other time. But that once it's completed, it's donezo, and that's the direction going forward. That said, to your point there, Omi, I'm not entirely sure if they specifically put 2 and 2 together, but they have definitely explained that the memory crystals are the things that define when something happens that's of significance, that those will be recorded, and those are part of the server's history. So it's, even if they didn't say it explicitly, it doesn't take much synthesis to kind of understand those are going to be the things that drive the server. So, the memory shards are going to be those sort of like, all right, this part of this arc has now been completed, and now other events that can occur and manifest from that will, potentially be able to occur.
That was another thing. And when I do little notes, there was only one part in what I sent you guys that had the sort of a bolted and italics part which caught me. Because we were told many streams ago about this idea of being able, memories, and being able to go back and replay or visit the story points of a server and how they would be different. I guess I had always conceptualized this in some sort of cutscene or a written thing that I'd have to read, but the exact words that they used was there's a different system for replaying previous phases for the big main story arcs. However, decisions and objectives you make in those won't count towards your server's what's canonized for your server. So that gave me a whole other idea. So you actually can replay as a physical character these stories again. And I'm just sort of in my mind trying to think, well, how does that work? If that story has come and passed, and the server has moved into an entire new direction. Like, how do I then get to go replay through that system? Is it like an instant system that I get to go experience this and play through and play through? Because otherwise, how
That's a
does
good
it?
question.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to fit with the lore, and that's just very different from how I initially conceptualized this, which was just watching. I don't know. I can go watch Dig's character kill the dragon because that was a major, and I can watch that as many times as I want. But this, the way it was worded, I don't get to just watch. I get to actually go do it. It doesn't count towards the server progression, but I get to actually do it myself, which really threw me a little bit because I did not know that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
But we have something in the wiki that will say that there are some instances for story purposes, which could be something like this. And I guess replaying something from a memory crystal might have to be that, because it would be super trippy if you want to re-experience the destruction of the winter dragon, but the whole reason that you destroy the winter dragon is because there's perpetual winter as long as the winter dragon exists, and you activate a memory crystal and the winter dragon appears in reality along with perpetual winter. That would be super trippy for everyone who's not aware that somebody activated the memory crystal and all of a sudden winter is back. But so it could be that it triggers instances. But I do wonder about that too. How many times do we have to kill the winter dragon? Do we only kill the winter dragon once?
It could be that when the winter dragon comes back, it just doesn't freeze the world over.
No, I meant who gets to kill it? How long? What? Right? Because bunches of people will be trying to kill the winter dragon, and is it just going to be one raid? Like when and who actually gets to do that? One thing that is supposed to happen though is that dungeons and raids, or that content, is supposed to change session to session. So even if you're doing Carphin, if you return to try it again, it should not have exactly the same configuration of mobs and NPCs there. And I'm not sure that even the boss will be interacting with you in exactly the same way. I mean, that's what's been said before. We can find that in the wiki as well. Can they implement that? We'll have to see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just change up, like, okay, what are the NPCs that the last great raid group had an easy time with, and why were they easy? All right. Now it's resistant to all of those elements, and we're going to make a tougher version of that same enemy manifest, but maybe a little bit less of them. So it's like, oh, it's Carphin Soldier Type B. Gee, I wonder what's different. There's a few less of them. Well, everybody just nuke him with fire damage. And oh, crap! Fire damage is bouncing off of it, literally bouncing back in our faces. This is terrible. Abandoned ship. Our strategy won't work again the same way. This dungeon has adapted. I hope it's like that sort of thing. And so it almost would make an interesting sort of thing of playing through with groups that are intentionally weaker in certain areas, and then play through again after you've gone through it a few times and wiped on the boss with a group that's specifically strong in that area, to see if you can kind of shift the balance, kind of like like a push-pull sort of thing, to get someone off balance and throw them to the ground, like a judo move sort of thing. That you're juking it one way, that it's like, all right, we're building up our units and forces and our range and our magic use in a certain way, because that's most of what we've been facing. And it's like, aha, we got you now. And you suddenly bring the complete inverse to, do the actual raid that you're actually trying to finish it with.
Yeah, I do actually kind of like when you have done a variety of quests and you return home and the NPCs are talking about what you did. Hey, thanks Diggs, for doing XX, and oh yeah, we really needed your help then. I do kind of like when the NPCs dialogue changes to recognize you. But that is normally you as the positive hero. They're responding to you in a positive way. I don't think I've experienced NPCs like mobs saying, "Oh, Diggs, I remember when you were here before. You killed my daughter. Now you're KOS because you killed my parents." Um, it would be kind of fun if we've got to have Fippy Darkpaw respawning. It would be nice to have them. I'd rather have the NPCs trash talking me than than other players trash talking me. Um, so yeah, I mean, part of what I was saying, and it's associated with what you were saying, Neuro, is if these dungeons are changing session to session, even if we see the same boss but slightly different minions, it would be nice if the boss would acknowledge us by name or acknowledge that they've encountered us before, or maybe that they've you killed my tank minions, but now I've got mage minions, they will destroy you, something. I don't know. We'll have to see.
The other thing that I'm curious about with Biochi, we're talking about this in chat as this repeating of the story arcs, that they go on cooldown and that you can repeat them later. That still kind of confuses me on this idea of a world that is supposed to be moving forward and changing and diverging. Why?
Progressing is not necessarily the same thing as forward, but okay.
Well, an action leads to a new act, right? And the action of the players of the server leads to change. And so this idea that, well, I can come back in a month later, I can do this chapter again. Like, well, I don't know. I have some mixed feelings on that because I like the idea. I think they mentioned, well, they don't really want dailies. They don't want weeklies. And that this sort of system allows you to not have to compete regularly. And I like that. But then from a lore perspective, like a story perspective, I don't know how I feel about in the open world having these chapters sort of repeat. I feel like once you've gotten through the chapters, shouldn't you be moving on to a new story? Like, why do they have a cooldown? I guess maybe that's too much world change.
But it depends. I mean, it depends on how they change and what's exactly happening. So, one, we know there's going to be some repetition even with the rise and fall of nodes, right? So, you destroy one node and it might get rebuilt. It is likely to have a different name when it pops up again. We talk about the Winter Dragon, but it might not be the Winter Dragon. It might be a Winter Dragon. So, I would hope if it returns in another chapter that it won't have the same name. And then I would hope that would be the case for some of these goblin factions. If a goblin event pops up again, I would hope that it's not all the exact same named goblins, but it is Ashes of Creation and people return from the ashes. It may be that there's some kind of Ragnarok or recycling of these tales. We don't know exactly how that works on Vera. Maybe the apocalypse has happened many times.
We're actually almost this has gone super quick. I will probably go over a little bit. Did you have something else to say? No.
Yeah, I put it in chat, but I'm just gonna say it, verbally here. It's kind of an odd idea that there's FOMO in the monthly sellable things, but not in gameplay. That was actually something I was a little surprised, maybe taken aback in the past couple of months of streams. That, oh yeah, we can go to this area and. All right, that's right. You've got to kill that enemy to get the boots, and you got to kill that enemy to get the shirt, and you got to kill that enemy to get the warhammer or the fancy shield or whatever. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. I thought all these things were supposed to die. I thought all these things were supposed to stay dead. You mean the world doesn't change when we kill all the ones that have the fancy pants on? You mean there are going to be more of them with the fancy pants until you finish the big bad guy in the area, and then maybe they'll go away and maybe come back at some point? I've expressed my kind of thoughts on that in previous episodes, but I just want to state it again that it's such an interesting thing to me that on the pre-order marketplace, it's a 1 month run. That's it. You can find similar alternatives through gameplay, but if you want to get them in this form, you got one chance. There's 30 days plus or minus, and that's it. But that is not the case with actual gameplay and things being pushed forward and having like a feeling, a sense of permanence to it that, all right, we went out, we used the flame sieve, we killed the bad things, we finished off the big bad dude in the area. Now we can start to purge the death and corruption and badness from this area and forever change it to something we can utilize positively. I don't entirely get the feeling that that's actually the case, and that's a bit of a weird thing to me because that was kind of the direction that I kind of thought things were going the whole time. That you would eventually kill off all of the ghost soldiers outside the human starting area, and then when that happens, new players who come into the world have a different threat that they get to address.
I think that is true for a time. So I don't think it's every month. I don't think these things are going to repeat monthly. But after 6 months or so, new people might get a whiff of similar. Because again, goblins. I mean, it's not like there's only one goblin faction in the world. They're gonna. I'm gonna be political and just say I don't know if it's political, but real worldly. Unrest in the Middle East. I'm just going there, right? How long has there been unrest in the Middle East? And you go and you have some wars, and you come back 100 years later, and you still have wars in the Middle East. Right? Like, how many thousands of years has that been a thing? And you can kill all the factions you want, but there's going to be something. It's going to come up again. So I think it's going to be the same thing with the goblins, right? You kill goblins now, and then 6 months later, some other goblin faction comes back in and say, "You killed my mother and father. You're KOS."
Well, but I think
I did get the feeling, even in Alpha 1, that there were distinctly different tribes of Sladeborn in different regions. And so I would imagine all of the NPC creature factions, your goblins, your minotaurs, whatever, will have their different tribal expressions in the different regions or other tribal or whatever culture they organize by. Phantomix, you're going to say something.
I mean, it's one thing if it's a new tribe with new leaders and there's some sort of story to explain that. It's another, I've certainly played games where in my mind how this almost measures up, or it seems to based off the stream, where Dungeon X is open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Dungeon Y is open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Sunday you can go to all of them. It almost has this feel like, okay, it's January, so on January these are the chapters that can come back around, or it's week 3 in a 4-week process, and that means that chapter B is open. Like that's almost how it felt like when they're talking about it's a rotating cooldown process, which I don't know how I feel about that. I guess I always, as you kind of are saying, or I always imagined, once I equate it to reading a book. Once I don't go backwards in chapters. Like I once it has concluded, it has concluded. Now I get that that's a way to reuse content and keep people engaged in new stuff. I don't know. It just seems weird, but
I think it's more complex than that, though, because I don't think we get a goblin event every January necessarily, and it might be 3 or 4 months. But I think whatever cycle and rotation that is, it's still dependent on a bunch of other stuff that we're doing in the game. So I don't, and it's going to be different server for server.
But it didn't feel that way. Like,
I'm
because the
I'm pretty sure it's that. But
well, maybe, but the context it was presented in is, hey, if you have a vacation, don't worry about it. You're going to easily get to do this again. So it didn't feel like it was a mix of, multiple things lining up. It really felt like, you'll get, this will happen again. You'll get to do it at some point down the road, which just seems
you
weird.
will, but that doesn't mean it's going to be every month or once a month or whatever. It means that it'll come up again. It doesn't mean that you've missed it forever.
So I don't know.
I don't think the rotation is as fixed and predictable as you're expecting it to be. That wasn't my understanding of it.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, that's my arguing for that is that it's not. That would make the world definitely feel a very different way than if there
And
was.
we're hoping.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on that I thought we aren't even going to get to the lore. Maybe we'll get to do that next time because there's some interesting lore. Actually, I'm very confused by part of it, but the visual storytelling I thought is also really pretty neat. Now I wonder if this is going to extend everywhere in the world or if this is just a very highly detailed dungeon. They did say this is the largest dungeon in the Riverlands, so it's like, okay, are the smaller dungeons going to have this much detail within the lore? If so, that is really badass because I'm just thinking of, okay, how many times did I go into Stormwind or any of these other zones, Lochmodan or any of the Eastern Kingdoms, and you see the zone has a sculpture here and there, but there's really nothing tied to it. Like there's nothing I can go to that, oh, hey, here's a book that tells me who this person is. That's really neat, that the way they went through each of the deans and how one of them sort of just vanished. And that's apparently going to be a story arc because this person never came back. Seems really neat.
You reminded me, speaking of sculptures, that yeah, I mean, I was completely turned off almost immediately by Tower of Carphin because all we saw were humans and elves. Kind of tired of always saying humans and elves. That seems to be your basic good guy in these things. It's been what, 6 years, and in the beginning when I was running around Ashes of Creation and going, okay, well, we've got elves and humans that look like European Americans, basically. Okay, it's the start. They've only had a year to go, but it's been 6 years. I'd like to see some statues. I don't even have to have people running around. I'd like to see some statues that are not just, European American versions of humans and elves. We should be able to see some statues of Vec and Nakua and Renkai. And even if they haven't built statues yet, okay, give us some statues of orcs and uh, dwarves. That would be nice in your demos.
Yeah.
I would say there was that lore bit that we've got about King Atrax and the Tauran Empire, which was the Aelin and Purian, like kind of the convergence of those two, and it makes me wonder where that existed relative to Carphin, because it seems to me that was like the Tauran Empire was either in existence or fell just before the apocalypse happened. So the Carphin itself would have been one of the major focal points of that empire, because that was the place where they came together to do the magic study. The elves knew the magic, the humans asked them for the magic, they taught them, they joined forces, worked together, both there and throughout that sort of region of the Tauran Empire. Those were like the two main dominant sort of folk. I believe they were big in the Riverlands, but I would have to review things just a little bit more. But that that I feel like is part of the stuff that they've been showing off and demonstrating and talking about, and for that's partially why they've been focusing on the Riverlands and this sort of stuff. That it's just the lore that they've been the most forward with, which I'm almost a little happy about that, because I get the feeling we're going to be bored of some of the humans and some of the elves by the time we get to launch, and all the lore we don't know about is going to be all the cool stuff about everyone else, because, you know, so much will have already been revealed about the humans and the elves. So
I don't know that I need lore reveals specifically, because I don't need to know the names of the statues. Just I want to see some statues that are not elves, and it's been 6 years. I'd like to see some other races uh celebrated other than just, you know, humans and elves. Um and I know it's kind of blasphemous, but I would prefer to see, instead of seeing Alar bowing down to Pyrians because the Pyrians were so helpful, I would rather see some Pyrians bowing down to some Dunzenkells or some Kiveks, even, because the Pyrian needed to rely on the Kivek for help. I mean, I don't even need to know what the actual lore was, but just if you've got a mural of that of the Pyrian, of the Aelins bowing down to Pyrians, I'd prefer to see Pyrians bowing down to Kivek, and just show us a mural of that. Don't tell us the lore behind it, right? And I don't think you can get bored of just seeing a mural or some statues.
Well, the other thing that I thought was neat is the again, not the visual component, so the environment changing. That is also again, depending on how far they can push this into all of these different chapters that happen, could be really neat. I mean, again, using WoW for as an example, I mean, how many times have you gone into Ironforge? Actually, I was watching a video on this not too long ago about it was Osmongold, and he was talking about an old alpha server or something. But anyways, he pointed out that the entrance to Ironforge has literally never changed since alpha. Like it has just, it's exactly the same as it is now as it was then. And so the idea that you can go into areas and it physically changes is also neat. I used to hate the idea of jump puzzles too, because that was a part of the bridge getting across. That has become more incorporated in New World. There are areas that you have to actually do some parkour, and actually I've kind of enjoyed it. But again, depending on how far they can take that, I think that's going to be a really neat experience where the world just changes.
More for like a heroic movement sort of game is where I'd like to see sort of that sort of thing.
If you've got a heroic movement, there needs to be villainous movement too. So
So basically moving like the Despicable Me guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I dig it.
I would not. I mean, it's not. I would not. I did not have too much of a problem with what we had in Alpha One. We had some jumping puzzles in Alpha One, and that wasn't too bad. I think I'd prefer sporadic, but there's supposed to be the mage who had a floating ability when we saw the mage 5 or 6 years ago. That's supposed to be one of the utility aspects of the utility skills for the mage. So different ways for people to get around and maybe to help people get around. But yeah,
I do believe we actually get an update on the mage classes the next stream. I think I might be making that up, I guess, but I'm pretty sure that is the next update.
mage seems due. So
That'll be interesting. kind of want to see more about like the visuals, the shape language, what sort of tools and specificity. It definitely didn't feel like we had the ability to choose like one or two elements or like focuses of the way that we use our magic. It's all right. Here's what a wizard knows, and you know all of it, and it all fits on your hot bar, and that's all you got. It's Alpha 1. You know, that's fine for Alpha 1, but now I'd like to be able to see half a hot bar or more of one specific element, or, you know, half a hot bar or more of one specific modality. Like maybe I'm a dot guy. Maybe I want to have an arcane dot, a fire dot, some sort of venomous dot, you know, a few different ones, and be able to stack them all, you know, dots, and that's exactly dots, more dots. That might be my focus, that instead of being the guy who's sitting there nuking, that I get the dots going, and then I cast a spell that helps me sustain them instead of having to recast them. That as a focus, or maybe someone that's all obviously the high AoE sort of character is definitely something you'd imagine people would specify for PvP. If you're going to be fighting large groups of players, what better way to deal with them than indiscriminately bombing them?
Yeah, I don't
especially now that they said that you might be able to destroy part of the cover someone's hiding behind on one of those walls. So yeah, just blast it. Be your own catapult. Be the catapult you want to see in the world.
It's interesting seeing the remakes of, you know, the seeing the mage and the ranger, but you know, I want to see the stuff we haven't seen, like the bard, and I don't think we've seen anything with a summoner, what they can do. Have we seen a rogue either? We saw a fighter that dual wielded, but that was not a rogue.
Right.
I don't know. I'm
the most roguey thing I think we've seen is those goblins who you couldn't see their nameplate unless you specifically clicked on them.
Yeah.
I will say that
we saw the Predator back in the day, which was a Ranger rogue, I believe.
You know, I'm really interested in the bard just because I have gravitated towards sort of the oh my gosh, I'm losing the name of in my head. Not the, I want to say enhancement talent, just totally like not even right, but the support. And when anything is asked with Steven about support classes, it's just bard basically is what's thrown out. Like there's nothing else. There's none of your classic enchanter and sort of these World of Warcraft classics that existed. It's always bard. It's like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, but all right, let's see it. But we haven't been able to see the bard, so.
All right. Summoner and bard are going to be the last ones that we see, apparently.
And it was the UI they did show or point out this time that there was a small part of the UI that actually indicates an icon of what your secondary is, which is actually kind of nice. I think being able to see that when you click on somebody's nameplate is a welcome addition and better understanding who they are. So.
Did you say you did see that? What did you say about that? What was
there was a question about Steven's nameplate, that there was an icon that people had noticed that they hadn't seen before, and it was the second.
I gotcha.
Yeah, it was the secondary.
Cool. I'll have to take a look at that again.
So, well, with that, we are well over our time. Maybe we'll have to focus more on lore next week or the week after. Because there was a very confusing part about, the whole lore of Tower of Carphin is actually very interesting. So the use of blood magic and how it ties into King Atrax as well. But we will save that for another time. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you back here next Sunday.
Sounds good. See you later, everybody.
See ya.